Hello, Eternal Life fans. What you're about to see is a highly deluded man give his reasons why he accepts death and why he no longer fears dying. Okay? Let's begin.
I want to get your thoughts on the industry as a whole and where we are today. I got a quote from you where you said, basically, the entire health and fitness industry and diet is all based on fear. And the fear is based on the fear of dying and of death.
A completely rational fear, okay? The fear of death is very healthy and normal because most people, whether they admit it or not, understand that death is the worst thing ever.
And that's pretty deep because a lot of us, when we see that, we don't see that far down the rabbit hole. You know, we just see things that, oh yeah, you need to be healthy and that kind of thing. But if you look at it that way, what can you show us that we should see about it? And then what are some of the conclusions that we can draw?
Baby boomers in particular are starting to see the end. You know, there's, well, I like to think of it as light at the end of the tunnel.
The light, not the darkness.
The light.
So we're already seeing the first signs of delusion. By saying death is the light at the end of the tunnel, he's clearly trying to romanticize death. He's trying to make light of death. This is a very common thing that people do when they're trying to delude themselves regarding death. You see this all the time. Okay, this is a classic coping mechanism. Through the power of delusion and lies, he's attempting to make death seem not as bad. Okay, and I think this is because he can't handle the truth. He can't handle the fact that death sucks, so he wants to pretend like death is okay. That's what's going on here. This is delusion. That's what you're witnessing here. Pure delusion.
Yeah,
my dad's a lot of people are very fear of their own demise. It's something that's very uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about it.
It affects our behaviors in many ways we don't understand.
All right, I want everyone to understand the irony of what's going on here. The irony is that the fear of death is affecting these people, these two people here who are having this conversation. The guy who just said that the fear of death affects people in ways they don't understand. The fear of death is causing these people to attempt to rationalize death in the most insane ways. Delusional thinking. This is very similar to what religious people do. Atheists and secular people are not immune to delusional thinking. That's what you're seeing right here. These two people are both secular, and they are resorting to the most bizarre coping mechanisms when it comes to death. They are attempting to rationalize death in the most absurd ways. They are blinded to their own delusion, how death, the fear of death, is affecting them.
You know, all these midlife crises. You know, people are afraid of dying. They're trying to, act out. This huge push for health and fitness. Trying to preserve your longevity because you're afraid of your ultimate demise.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about it too much. I've overcome my fear of death. I have.
So most people are afraid of dying, but this guy is afraid to admit the truth about death. This guy is afraid to see death in an honest way. He's afraid to admit that death will essentially make his whole life meaningless. That's what he doesn't want to admit. He doesn't want to admit the terrible truth about death.
Creatures often go to extremes to protect themselves from pain.
It is a human instinct. So if a human is confronted with a situation, a dire situation, they have two options, fight or flight. The regressives are the ones that choose flight. Now, this is not literal, whereas in the past it was literal. If you saw a lion, you could fight it or you could run from it. Nowadays, it's fight or flight intellectually, verbally. So what they will do is, instead of confronting and dealing with problems and seeing things for what they are, in other words, if it's ugly, if it's uncomfortable, let it be. Address that. No, they instead would rather scurry around that, mitigate that, deny that.
I'm not saying that I just want to go out and die, but I'm not afraid of dying. I got very comfortable with the idea.
He's overcome his fear of death with layers and layers of delusions. Essentially, what we have here is a grown adult playing pretend. He is pretending like death is somehow okay, and that dying won't render his life completely meaningless, which it would. This is pure mental weakness and dishonesty.
Mental weakness is what you're witnessing.
He's gotten very comfortable with the idea of dying. Okay, this guy is clearly deluded, and I hope this is clear to everyone. What this guy is saying is not sane, it's not healthy. He needs to talk to somebody about his delusions. I mean, this is insane here. You know, like that quote from Alice in Wonderland. You need to talk to somebody about your delusions, sir. Okay, you are absolutely crazy. Everyone else is fearing death because they haven't deluded themselves like him. That's why they're fearing death, because it's normal to fear death, because normal people understand that death is awful.
Because I think of it like birth, right? You know, a soul comes into this world, people are born, and people die. Why can't we think of death like birth, right? A being is ushered into the world, a being is ushered out of the world. It's the same basic process, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Was that stupid or what? The reason most people can't think about death in the same way that we think about birth is that we're not stupid. We know that birth and death are very different.
It's the same basic process, isn't it?
To compare birth and death and say they are basically the same is absolutely retarded. Idiot.
It's the same exact thing.
No, birth and death are not the same exact thing. Let's have a side-by-side comparison. Birth and death. Do these look like the same thing? I don't see anything similar here. One, we have a person being born into the world and they get to have fun. They're looking forward to getting to have a joyful life, and that's great. On the other hand, we have death. Very different. Someone is being ushered into what's most likely permanent non-existence. They are ceasing to exist.
So where are you going? You're going to dial tone land. You're going to oblivion. You're going to the exact same address you were at before you were born. Exact. Return to sender.
They're never going to get to have fun ever again. They're not going to get to have anything. They lose. They get nothing. And everything they ever did in life is rendered pointless.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Give him the word that I'm not a rover. Then tell him that his lonesome nights are over.
Because they lose everything at the moment they die. So these things are extremely different. How dare you say that they are the same thing?
It's the same exact thing. But all this fear, I think, is really fueling, especially for the older group, a lot of this fitness stuff. People are trying to, youthify themselves and get young and fortify themselves. And like I say, I'm all for it. I'm not saying that people should neglect themselves and just accept the inevitable. But what I'm saying is you shouldn't do it out of fear.
Why not? Why not do it out of fear? What's wrong with trying to survive out of fear? If people don't have fear of death, they're a delusional idiot like this guy. This is another common tactic you see with these people. They're always trying to demonize fear. They're trying to make fear out to be some bad thing. Fear isn't a bad thing. Fear is necessary for survival. It's a good thing. The reason you're alive right now is probably because you have that fear of death that's guiding you, helping you avoid dangerous situations that will get you killed.
I'm scared! I want to live.
Okay, so know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, and
But
why? And
it's such an uncomfortable thing. Like, like the old joke. They asked the Protestant minister, like, well, what do you think is going to happen when you die? He says, oh, for sure, I'm going to go to the pearly gates and I'm going to be in paradise and in heaven. But let's not talk about it because it's too depressing. It's like, really?
He actually brought up a very good point there, many religious people don't truly believe the stuff they say that they believe. Deep down, they know that the belief in heaven, the belief in God, is just a way they're trying to cope with their own death.
Creatures often go to extremes to protect themselves from pain.
Now, obviously, some people actually do believe this stuff, to the core. They really are genuinely convinced that this stuff is real. But a lot of these people are just trying to fool themselves, and they know that they're fooling themselves. It's their own delusion to cope with death. It's self-deception for the sake of their own sanity, because human beings are terrified of death. We should be terrified of death, but we shouldn't resort to these crazy coping mechanisms. We should just fight death using science, using technology, using the power of nature, using anything we can. We should actually come up with a real solution to death rather than just lie to ourselves. Okay, I'm going to skip over a huge portion of this video now that has nothing to do with the topic of death, and here's the last bit that I want you to see.
But probably the quality of your life. Maybe
But the
in those
quality of
later
your life
years.
is the key.
Yeah, okay, but
See,
not necessarily extended.
My main idea is, I don't want to be crippled up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. You move, you feel good.
Yeah.
Your body is an asset to yourself.
I don't want to be, all plugged in. Brian, you got to promise me that you come to the hospital and pull the plug if anyone ever hooks me up to any machine.
Do I have to promise that now?
Yeah.
All right, Steve, I'll do it.
Make the plug.
All right.
So that's it. Is that stupid or what? And this last comment about wanting his plug to be pulled just confirmed everything I've been saying. He's totally accepted death. He's actually made peace with death, and he doesn't fear death at all.
You are so delusional.
How stupid. Someone like this guy is probably not going to live forever because he obviously doesn't even think it's possible, and he just doesn't care. It's very pathetic. That's it, folks. Thanks for watching. If you find any more deathists, please share them with me so we can mock them and shame them. I want to bring their idiocy to the light so all of you can see it. But this guy is not rare. It's important to understand that lots and lots of people in the world are doing the exact same thing as this guy. They are lying to themselves just so that they don't have to live with the fear of death. So don't be one of them, okay? Don't be one of these people that lies to yourself. Be honest with yourself and admit to yourself how horrible death is. Admit to yourself, be willing to live with the painful reality that death is a nightmare, that we're in a nightmare, and we have a lot of hard work to do. It's going to be hard to live forever. And by admitting this stuff to ourselves and being real, being honest with ourselves, we're going to fear death, and then that's going to give us the motivation to do whatever we need to do to live. It's about survival. That's what this life is about. First and foremost, this life is about survival, staying alive. And lying to yourself, you're not going to do yourself any favors, okay? We need to be honest with ourselves. Admit the horrible truth that if you die and cease to exist, you lost. You're a loser. And it sucks for you. Don't let it happen to you. We got to survive. Be a survivor. Be a fighter.